What's up, motherfucker? If you made it this far, it means you want to know more about you. So let's fucking go then. The settlement of NÍUÀTŌPØTΑPÖ. There was a boat that once sailed from NÍUE to Samoa, and a hurricane came through and sunk those motherfuckers. Even the boat. That meant everyone had to swim to safety. Know what I mean? On this boat was this man and his wife, and they were swimming and they ended up reaching the small uninhabited island. But check this out. The man's wife was pregnant though, so on this island he set off to find some food, managing to only find the fruits of a pandanus tree. Now before we get into the rest of the fucking story, the pandanus tree in the ancient days was pronounced far. Say it with me. Far. Please understand this, that there were already people on those islands before Columbus and them turned up. And when those foreign sea explorers came in, they brought paper, they brought ink, they brought language, and what else? Fucking alphabets. They brought motherfucking letters, those fucking symbols. And you know what that means? That means that since that particular time on Earth, we're being programmed to understand their language and their ways. Meaning they've had the ability to write everybody's story so long as it's in English, even ours. So in this unknown world of mine, when you hear the word far, or even the word far, motherfucker, it means the same exact thing. You know why? Because those foreign explorers couldn't change the fucking sound, the dumb motherfuckers. You can alter meanings and change words, switch letters around and shit, but you can't fucking change the sound. I can go deeper and tell you how far or far is the same as these. And these are the languages around the world, but I don't want to jump into that just yet. It'll come. Just bear with me and I'll show you the fucking world of what it was before. I don't know any other way to say this, but these symbols are symbols that they made up. Okay? They weren't symbols that came from our islands or from your country. Do you understand? They made that so it could separate us and so they could control us. And if you can learn to listen properly, you'll be able to see and hear what I mean. In the end, you'll understand we all sound the same in some fucking weird way. We all just sound a little more rough and smoother than others. But that's just because of the years of damage these motherfuckers have done to our connection. Do you understand? So remember, on this episode, when you hear far, Hamor doesn't fucking mean bye, not just yet. In this fucking world I'm in, the concept of Hamor doesn't fucking exist just yet. That's a modern term, just like how we are too, and of all of Polynesia. We're all modern Polynesians now. But after a bit of research from certain books from the 16th century of the switching of our letters, you'll be surprised what you find after deciphering that shit. Deciphering what those early sea explorers were trying to hide. But we'll get to that shit later. So Hamor, when you fucking hear the word far in these stories, don't fucking leave me. I need your fucking ass for this so you can understand this part because it unlocks both our paths. Back to the story. So far equals pandanus tree. And it looks like this. Cool? Then fucking forget it. I'ma ask you later. So as the husband was going along the island looking for fruits from the far, he doesn't realize his wife gives birth to a baby boy. And during the husband's search for food, he finds one single new coconut washed onto shore not far from where they were. So he takes it back to his wife along with the other fruits he found from the far, only to find that she had given birth. He then gives her fruits from the far, but not of the new. He suggests that they should plant it instead. His wife then agrees and the coconut was planted. Day by day she took her baby to where the coconut was planted to see if anything had happened, but nothing had happened. Until one day she went down to look at the progress of the plant, she saw a little plant had shot out the soil. This made her excited. Time went by and she saw the plant shoot had grown into a round leaf and it parted into long stems. She couldn't hold her emotions any longer. She had to let her husband know the progress of the plant. She called to her husband.
Look, the shoot has changed and now we can see a leaf of a coconut.
The husband replied, "Awai alaki ai, tuku ai pe, inai tō ke lau." Don't touch it, leave it alone, for it was planted to have leaves. It was then when the son's name was born. And seeing as their son's name was birthed from this meaning, it was only right that they named the island Tokelau. When Tokelau became a young man, his father decided to find him a wife, so they sailed to the island of Manua. This is where young Tokelau got married and he lived there with his wife, while his father returned back to the island Tokelau to his wife. Young Tokelau's parents continued to live at Tokelau, and as time went by, young Tokelau's mother fell pregnant again and she gave birth to a baby girl named Hina. At around the same era, young Tokelau's wife also gave birth to male twins. Their names were Ba Kofe and Ba Tofe. These twin brothers grew up to be brave warriors, until one day the twins argued about something. One twin picked up a stick and struck the other twin on the leg, leaving him badly injured. Because of this incident, rumors began to spread, and he was known as Sete, crippled brave. This made the crippled twin pissed off because his leg stopped him from being able to get him back. So he gathered his followers and they set sail on boats to find new land. They sailed and they sailed, until they finally spotted an island where they decided to settle and call that part of the island Whalehau. Seketoa was known as the Hau Aliki, ruler of chiefly blood, and his house was known as Whaleoihau. That is the reason that part of the island was called Whalehau, house ruler. This island they were on was called NÍUÀTŌPÄTÁPÖ. While Seketoa stayed in Whalehau, he had 3 kids, 2 boys, and their names were Lupo Lupo and Fatuaika, and he had a girl by the name of Ilaheva. The meaning of Ilaheva is broken into 2 parts, Ila and Heva. Ila talks about a black spot being on the skin that usually has a common occurrence, or black hairs growing out of it, like a mole of some sort, and the translator describes the word Heva to mean a larger version or deeper, more extensive, like a mole which has multiplied. Here's what gets me about this bitch there. This translator starts talking about the mole and says, it is said this lass was so called because she was a female whose chest was very hairy and its abundance was like a blemish which has spreadened or deepened. It took me a while, but first I said, bitch, what the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck is a lass? I searched up the meaning of lass and it said lass is a young girl or a young woman, a term used in Scotland and North England. I automatically started to wonder if she was a spy as well, who was sent to alter certain meanings in books from anyone in Polynesia who was wanting their work to be translated into English. Because in Manila's attack in 1762, it proved East Sussex hit, and over here, North England and Scotland were translating the works of NÍUÀTŌPÄTÁPÖ. I mean, if we're trying to find out our history, it's pretty obvious that England had a big role and a big part to play, and so far, it ain't painting a pretty picture for me, personally. However, I couldn't let this thought overpower my overall judgment about England or the book, so I kept fucking reading, but this also meant I had close eyes on English literature now. Back to the story. So after she describes Ilaheva's chest, this made Seketoa forbade his daughter Ilaheva to have a husband from NÍUÀTŌPÄTÁPÖ, or even to return to Hamoa, Niue, or Tokelau, but he said that she should sail southwest to find new land and find a husband. This young girl then sailed from NÍUATŌPÄTÁPÖ with a few followers to fulfill her father's wishes. She sailed on until she reached Vava'u. However, the girl didn't want to stay there, so they set sail again. And they reached Hawaii, but still the girl didn't want to stay there, so again they set sail and continued their voyage. Until they reached Tongatapu, and it was there where she finally decided to stay. And her wishes was to stay at a place named Popua. Apparently Ilaheva was a beautiful girl, and because people found her at Popua, they called her Vaipopua, beside Popua. As time went on, Ilaheva Vaipopua became pregnant, and when asked who the father of her unborn child was, she told them it was the god Tangaloa who had climbed down the toa tree from heaven. When the time came, Ilaheva Vaipopua gave birth to a baby boy who was called Aho'eitu. Aho'eitu was the first Tu'itonga, king of Tonga. Queries about Ilaheva's country came to her, and she told them that she came from a little island known as Niua, which had many coconut trees on it, which gave birth to the name Niua, meaning abounding in coconuts. And because chiefs and rulers and many other things were considered sacred on this island, they were granted the title Toputapu, meaning sacred. Ever since then, Niua has been called NÍUATŌPÄTÁPÖ, and Ilaheva has been known in Tonga as Vaipopua. It is said, according to the story, that Tokelau often used to voyage between Tokelau and Manua, on account of his 2 twin sons in Manua and his sister Hina in Tokelau. As time went by, one day Tokelau was caught in a storm at sea, and his boat was lost, and he died in that storm. When the storm at sea calmed down, a search was made for him, but not a trace of him was found. The only things that were found was pieces of wood and things of a wrecked boat caught on a reef in the middle of the ocean, some distance from the island of Tokelau. They were sure that this was Tokelau's boat, which had broken up and disintegrated. They dived, searching for his body in vain, but it wasn't seen again. But all of a sudden, the grandfather of the conger eel shot out from a big cave in the rocks. They almost perished from being eaten by the giant eel. Those who left, they fled the scene, and they ultimately believed that it was Tokelau who died and turned into the spirit Tokemoana, giant conger eel. In the excess of Hina's love for her brother Tokelau, she one day requested the people to take her to go see Tokemoana, who was her brother Tokelau. So they took her and they reached the place where Tokemoana Tokelau lived. Hina jumped into the sea and dived down, and they called for her to come back up. They called until their voices were screechy and raspy, but they got no response. Several dived down there to look, but Hina was not seen again. Only Tokemoana, the giant eel, was seen with a huge pearl oyster shell at his side. They returned straight away with the opinion that Tokemoana was there guarding Hina, referring to the oyster shell as Hina. It was there where the two siblings were called Tokemoana, giant conger eel, and Hina Mata'itofe, Hina pearl. As for Hina, fishermen of the past would try and flatter her and charm her by calling out to her to come up and eat. They soon started signifying that if a fish came to nibble their fish hook, and if it devoured it, then they would be successful in their fishing. So Tokelau Tokemoana then became something they would have called a heathen priest, and the name Tokemoana became sacred. And so when they installed their new king in Niua, they called him Tokemoana. The tale of Ilaheva says her child Ep.2 was the eldest, and when he became the first Tuitonga, king of Tonga, Ilaheva returned here to Wharehau to her family. And after a short stay, her and her crew were ready to go see Tokemoana and Hina Mata'itofe. When they reached their reef in the sea close to their home island Tokelau, they seemed to understand that this was Ilaheva's grave for some reason. Ilaheva let out a long loud wail, then embraced their crew and sent messages of love to the family and all kin and took her leave. Her last words were,
You return to Whalehau. My regards to Whatuulu. Give my love to Siu Mafuauta and Pa Tangata. You return, and I'll stay with my grandparents Tokemoana and won't visit you again.
Then she jumped into the sea while the crew members remained in the boat. They all cried. They called out for a very long time, but Ilaheva didn't resurface. It was clear that she wasn't returning, so they went back to Niua. That is why the tomb of Ep.2's mother Ilaheva is in the depths of the ocean between Samoa and Tokelau. With the passing of time and the death of Seketoa, who came from Haamoa, the people appointed his son Lupo Lupo as Hau, ruler. Lupo Lupo and the people continued cooperating and living in harmony when suddenly a stranger appeared on the island. It is thought that this man was from Tongatapu. The name of the man was Lātū Mailangi. Lātū Mailangi married a woman from Seketoa's tribe. As time went on, the people started to fight and argue amongst each other. And this separated NīUΑTŌPÄTΑPØ into two main parties, creating a civil war. The party that Lātū Mailangi belonged to won, so the people appointed Lātū Mailangi to be their new king, and he was known as Tokemoana. During the reign of Lātū Mailangi Tokemoana and NīUATŌPÄTAPØ, a fisherman from Niue came there. The name of the man was NīUΑTŌPÄTΑPԸ. The man got his name because he was such a good fisherman that atu, mackerel fish, was stacked on his boat and it even rotted there like compost. Lātū Mailangi Tokemoana liked the Niuean man's name and asked him if they could exchange names. The Niuean agreed and they exchanged names. And so now the Niuean was called Tokemoana and Lātū was now called NīUATŌPÄTΑPØ. But because of the length of the name, the Niua people only used the first part of the name and they called their chief Ma'atu. That is why the noble titles of His Majesty, the King of Tonga, is called Ma'atu. The last Ma'atu died in 1937, who was Ma'atu Ma'afu Otu I Tonga. Ever since then, the title has been unappointed and awaits the pleasure of His Majesty Tupou, as there was no heir. So that's basically the settlement story of NīUATŌPÄTAPØ, told by the man Setefano Selui and translated by Wendy. Alright, fuck off to the next video now.